Have you ever looked at a groundbreaking invention or maybe a stunning piece of art and just thought to yourself, wow, I could literally never do that. I'm just not a creative person. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to completely demystify creativity. Because for a really long time, society has treated creativity like it's this rare, spontaneous magic. You know, a lightning bolt that only strikes a lucky few geniuses. But what if I told you it's actually a highly structured process? And even better, a process that you, right now, already possess the machinery for. By looking at the research, we're going to take creativity out of the clouds and bring it right down to earth.
Here's our quick roadmap. 1. Defining the spark. 2. The nature of creativity. 3. The creative toolkit. And 4. The 4 stages. Let's jump right in.
All right, Section 1, Defining the Spark. What is creativity? We often hear that imagination is the absolute backbone of the creative process, but what does it actually mean to use it? Let's look at 3 foundational perspectives.
First up, we have Burke. Notice his emphasis on usefulness here. Because, think about it, creativity isn't just about being weird or different for the sake of it. An original idea that doesn't actually solve a problem, like, say, a chocolate teapot, isn't truly creative, it's just a novelty. Real creativity requires blending pure originality with actual usefulness to solve everyday challenges.
Now, Spearman takes a slightly different, more cognitive angle. He treats creativity as the mind's ability to transform relationships. Think of it like taking 2 completely unrelated concepts, maybe a telephone and a camera, and slamming them together to generate an entirely new idea from that friction. It's all about dynamically connecting the dots in your brain.
And that brings us to Naaman, who brilliantly grounds creativity in pure execution. You see, you can't just dream, you actually have to do the heavy lifting to make that dream real. Creativity is the active process of taking those imaginative, spontaneous ideas and forging them into a tangible reality.
Moving on to Section 2, the nature of creativity. A universal trait. Now that we know what creativity is, let's officially bust the myth that it's just a rare gift given to a chosen few.
The research is incredibly clear on this. Creativity is truly universal. Every single one of us is capable of demonstrating it to some degree. It is both innate, meaning you are born with a capacity for it, and acquired, meaning it's literally a muscle you can train and build up over time. Its scope is completely unlimited. But here is the really fascinating part. It carries heavy ego involvement. When you are truly creative, your identity actually merges with your creation. You're putting a literal piece of yourself into the work, which, if you think about it, is exactly why getting feedback on a creative project can feel so incredibly personal.
So a crucial point here is that creativity rests heavily on what we call divergent thinking rather than convergent thinking. Convergent thinking is when you're trying to find the single correct answer, like solving a math equation. But divergent thinking, that's asking yourself, hey, how many totally different ways can I use a simple paperclip? It's adventurously exploring multiple unknown paths. Creativity lives right there, in that adventurous, divergent space.
But wait, despite what you might assume about all that free-flowing, divergent exploration, the process itself isn't totally spontaneous. It requires highly conscious elements. It's driven deeply by intrinsic motivation, which means you are doing the work for the pure satisfaction, interest, and enjoyment of the work itself, rather than for some external reward. And here's a really surprising twist from the research. Intrinsic motivation is key, for sure, but so is a little bit of anxiety. Total comfort doesn't actually breed innovation. A little bit of tension, a little bit of personal challenge is often exactly what forces a great idea forward.
Which brings us to Section 3, the creative toolkit. Components of creativity. If the creative mind is an engine, let's pop the hood and look at the 4 major components that keep it running.
We're going to start inside your mind with 3 within individual components. First, you need domain-relevant skills. I mean, you can't creatively disrupt an industry if you don't understand its baseline rules, right? Second, you need creativity-relevant processes. These are your cognitive styles, like your willingness to take a risk, your independence, and your disciplined work style. And third is task motivation. Remember that intrinsic drive we just talked about? You have to actually find the problem personally challenging and deeply satisfying to solve.
Now, zooming out, the 4th component is entirely external. This is your social environment. Because listen, even if you have all the skills, the risk-taking ability, and the motivation in the world, your environment can absolutely crush your creativity. The social environment has to offer collaborative, diversely skilled teams and supportive management.
Crucially, you need an atmosphere completely free from unfair criticism. Even the most brilliant internal skills will just shut down if they don't have a psychologically safe space to thrive and actively share ideas. All right, Section 4, the 4 stages. Wallace's creative thinking process. So how exactly do we put all these internal and external components into drive? We use Wallace's 4 stages.
I want you to think of the creative process as a journey over time, and it scales wildly. You might spend hours gathering raw data, then days just letting it organize in the back of your mind. And then, in a matter of literally seconds, the answer hits you. And finally, you spend weeks rigorously refining that final product. Wallace breaks the whole shebang down into 4 sequential steps: preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. Let's look at exactly what happens in each of these phases.
You begin with stage 1, preparation. This is where you collect all the necessary information, knowledge, and experience needed to solve the problem. You're essentially packing your toolkit. Then you move right into stage 2, incubation. This is when you step back. It's that total cliche of getting your best ideas in the shower. You are unconsciously testing different combinations in your head without actively forcing an answer.
This deeply internal contemplation eventually leads to stage 3, illumination. This is it, the famous aha moment. It's the stage where you suddenly reach a level of mastery over all that information. You perceive the overarching theme, and the solution suddenly materializes right before you. It feels like a spontaneous lightning bolt. But as we now know, that magic is actually just the delayed result of your thorough preparation and patient incubation.
Finally, you reach stage 4, verification. The idea exists, but is it good? Here you evaluate your hypothesis. You decide whether to accept or reject it. You rethink, revise, and refine the solution to make absolutely sure it is both original and useful. And getting through this grueling final stage requires that deep ego involvement we discussed earlier. That's what gives you the stamina to polish the idea until it actually works.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I hope one thing is abundantly clear to you. Creativity is not magic. It's not an exclusive club. It's a structured toolkit of domain skills, risk-taking, and intrinsic motivation, playing out across 4 distinct stages. And it's a toolkit you already possess. So, the only question left for us to ask is, what will you incubate next?